Hello and good evening, I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan.
You're watching Consider This, the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Now this weekend, Malaysia youth will try to prove that a virtual parliament can be done. Youth groups Undi 18, Challenger Malaysia and Liga Rakyat Demokratik have come together to organise Parlimen Digital in response to the lack of a proper parliament sitting by Dewan Rakyat. So spread across 2 days this weekend, Parlimen Digital will see 222 participants debate and vote on 2 bills concerning the government response to the pandemic. So over the next half an hour on the show, we will be speaking to the organisers and also to a participant of Parlimen Digital. Our first guest is Alicia Nicholle. She is the selection lead for Parlimen Digital. Alicia, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Now, I'd like to begin with the delegate selection process because the recruitment process, as I understand it, was done entirely online. So what was done to ensure minority representation of communities who are on the other side of the digital divide?
Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much for having me. Okay, so to make sure that we got minority representation, we reached out to a lot of local NGOs. As you mentioned, we were recruiting primarily online, which means through social media. And so we relied a lot upon organizations locally, spread across the nation, sharing, retweeting, and getting the word out there to reach out to youth from 15 to 35 years old to join and apply for Parlimen Digital.
Alicia, what kind of response did you get from this kind of outreach?
So we were really, really happy to note that we had a lot of minority representation. We've got people from the differently able communities. We've got stateless persons who are represented. Indigenous communities are definitely represented across Sabah, Sarawak. And basically, we've got really great response, and in total we collected over 1,500 applications to be representatives, but in total across applications to be observers as well as nominations, it reached nearly 8,000.
Wow, okay. So why do you think it got such an overwhelming response? What do you think accounts for this?
So a lot of people say that the youth are not very interested in politics, and I think the overwhelming response that we got shows that this isn't true. The youth are really looking for a space, and they really want to take part in the national narrative that's being had right now. And this really shows that, you know, the youth are engaged. They're there, and they're just looking for a platform, and I think they found it in Parlimen Digital.
Alicia, how different do you think your parliament, or Parlimen Digital, in terms of its representatives and the voices there, is from, apart from the age issue, is from the actual parliament that we have? I mean, do you, when you look at parliament, do you see yourself in it? Do you think it's representative of Malaysia?
Apart from the age issue, though, but it's actually really important to bring up the age issue because in the current Dewan Rakyat, I believe the median age is around 55. And in Parlimen Digital, it's 21.
Wow.
So I think the age issue is a really big thing that we should focus on. But in other aspects, the current Dewan Rakyat is only seeing about a 15% women's representation. We've managed to bring it up to 30%.
Okay.
We would have brought it up to 50% if the applications had been a bit higher, but we did see a lack of women applying. But in the 222 representatives, we have 30% women.
Wonderful. So you said earlier that you had about 1,500 applications to be delegates, and then about, was it 8,000 overall? Can I ask you, based on those numbers, how did you kind of filter it down to get these 222 representatives? What were you looking for aside from the demographics of each representative?
Okay, so it was basically a three-step process. The first was we were very sure that we wanted everyone to be geographically accurate, meaning that you had to either vote there or that was your hometown, so that you would see people representing places that they actually came from, as opposed to the parachute thing that you see in real-life politics, where people from the city go and stand in rural seats. So the first step was geographical. The second was based on merit. We had 6 subjective questions, things like why do you want to represent this constituency, or what kind of motions would you suggest? And we graded these questions based on merit. And all this was done blind, meaning there was no personal information as we were grading. So it was very, very objective. And so once we had the scoring, the people who rose to the top were assigned their seats. And then only we looked finally at diversity representation. And I think it's really important to note that people who come from minority communities are there based on merit. It just so happens that they also represent these minority communities.
Alicia, I want to ask you about the composition of the Parliament, of the Assembly. As we have in the real world, people are part of the government. So there are individuals who are members of parties that are in government, represent the executive. Do you have such a characteristic in your Assembly? Is there a government that has to answer things from opposition benches?
Absolutely not. So we are going to be extremely issues-based. We're going to focus on only the important things, and we're not bringing party or partisan politics into it. So everybody in the 222 representatives will stand as independent candidates and will just bring issues from their constituencies that they're experiencing.
Okay, so what's the plan after this weekend session, Alicia? I mean, what happens after Sunday?
That's a very good question, because the 222 are so involved and they're so engaged and they're really taking it an extra mile. So we would definitely like to make sure that their voices are continued to be heard. How we're going to do that hasn't exactly been planned. We're going to get through this weekend first, but we have a lot of engagement programs in the works for them, and we're going to continue to try and keep amplifying their voices.
Right. Alicia, talking about voices, I mean, there was an expectation that we were going to go into the next general election with this new crop of young people who are perhaps today 15 years old. But that looks unlikely because of the complications around automatic voter registration and perhaps the pressure that we might have a snap election this year. Are you concerned about that? I mean, are people unhappy, people in your demographic, unhappy that they might be disenfranchised?
Disenfranchisement is one thing, right? Because it's systemic, and we can protest and hope that our voices are heard. But if we can't vote for people who will not be eligible to vote if snap elections are called, there are other ways we can help. And I think what we saw, right, is that 50% of the people who applied basically were not eligible to vote, either because they were underage or because they had signed on as postal voters and their ballots didn't reach. They could always mobilize in other ways. You could always become a pacha. You can do a million other things to make a difference. Voting is the fundamental thing for democracy. It's your fundamental right. But there are other ways you can mobilize and make a difference.
Alicia, thank you so much for speaking with us. All the best this weekend. We're so excited for you and your team. But in just a few minutes, we're going to be taking a closer look at the technical challenges in simulating a 2-day parliamentary sitting online. What's that all about? Stay tuned to consider this. watching Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. With me is Sharaad Kuttan. We're speaking to the people behind Parlimen Digital, a youth-led initiative which will host a virtual parliament sitting over 2 days this weekend. Joining us on the line now is Eshaan Menon, technology lead of Parlimen Digital. Eshaan, good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. Now, back in May, when we had that one-day parliament sitting, it was reasoned by some experts that setting up a virtual parliamentary system could cost the country between 2 to 5 million ringgit, and it could take up to 2 years to get the system done. So how is it, Eshaan, that time and cost wasn't an obstacle for Parlimen Digital folks?
So I think there are two things to consider. Parlimen Digital is operating on a lower budget because we're doing this for a group of young people just to do a 2-day simulation. There are some additional costs that will be involved if the Parliament wants to do it, but it wouldn't take that much money and that much time. I think if we're going to be paying that much, we shouldn't expect it in 2 years. In 2 years, you could expect a unicorn to form in Malaysia, a billion-dollar company. That's the kind of time frame that would take would cost much less if you're going to charge that much.
Right. But even if customization would add to the cost, you don't reckon that it could cost up to 5 million ringgit and take up to 2 years, you reckon?
I'd imagine it could cost up to 5 million ringgit if there is a significant amount of investment in stuff like consulting, and if we're going to deliver individual laptops, maybe not that much. But my point is, if it costs that much, it shouldn't take 2 years to do. Technically speaking, this is something that would take just a number of days to a month for feasibility study and for the implementation. The question is, why does it cost that much and take that much time? That doesn't make sense to me as a technical expert myself.
Right. So, and I understand that this is your background. You are, in fact, working in technology. Have you, when you decided to come on board this project, did you look around? Because obviously, we all know that other parliaments have had some form of virtual existence and have conducted a business. Were you modeling yourself on anything that actually is out there in the world?
So we took lessons from other virtual parliaments. The British House of Commons and the House of Lords were one use case of a virtual parliament that sort of worked out in terms of how we saw the way they did it. Obviously, they didn't do everything perfectly. There are always ways to amend that. We're not going to copy a virtual parliament and do it the exact same way. But at the same time, we also looked at bad cases where some things did go wrong. And I think our focus here is to try to show that if we want to do it right, here's how we could do it, and provide a recommendation to the government and anyone who really wants to do something like this.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking about some of the technical challenges that come with trying to have an online sitting. We spoke to Alicia earlier. She's the selection lead for Parlimen Digital. She mentioned that 222 MPs will be coming from all around the world. I'm wondering, Eshaan, what that meant for you in ensuring that all the MPs from all around the country have adequate access to internet and ensuring that internet connection is a strong one.
So there are some challenges. I think we're aware that some regions of the country don't have very good internet access. We're working, so a technical team member works with a facilitator for each group and identifies each individual's challenges. And with each individual's challenges, we try to sort them out one with the other. We'll provide internet subsidies, and in the event that they're not able to get the coverage they need at where they live, we will help them by hosting them at a partner's location. Any organization that wants to help us out, and is helping us out, would help host them for the Parlimen Digital session on the 4th and 5th.
Eshaan, I want to know, I mean, I love the kind of youthful bravado with which, all of you are approaching this issue. Could you tell me, were there challenges that cropped up that you did not anticipate? Were there things that made you step back and say, perhaps this is harder than we thought it was going to be?
There always are. There always are. I can't deny that there are some things that we didn't anticipate fully, but we did plan for. We had backup plans. We did find that onboarding everyone to the platform was a little bit more challenging than initially expected, because the assumption is that young people are extremely technically literate and they can learn something very quickly. And to be fair, compared to a lot of the other people I've worked with of other age ranges for similar things, they did get on board very quickly. But we did fortunately have enough time to get everyone on board to our platform and explain things like two-factor authentication, the security measures we're taking to make sure that it's a secure meeting.
So how exactly will voting be done after the debates? How have you sorted that bit out?
So what we've decided to do for now is basically have everyone vote within the platform, because they have to sign in and authenticate themselves to get in the platform. So at the point of voting on the day, They will go in to separate channels of voting. They will basically be using an e-voting system. They click a few buttons within that same call. And once they've made that vote is permanently recorded and the vote is closed. And we refer to that at the end of it, the speaker announced it. It's fairly streamlined in the way we did it.
Okay.
Isn't this, because when the lockdown was happening across the world, there was a lot of enthusiasm for different platforms. Zoom became one of those big platforms, and then almost immediately we had a panic about breaches in security. For a digital parliament, what are the real breaches? I mean, what kind of breaches, what kind of scenarios in terms of security breaches would there be?
So for Parlimen Digital, we sort of prepared for a number of scenarios. What happened with several meetings on Zoom, actually Zoom bombing, that's something that can be avoided if you take the right security precautions. That's definitely something we're going to make sure that doesn't happen. We're doing our very best to take care of that security aspect.
Zoom bombing, like, did you say Zoom bombing? Did you say
Zoom bombing?
What is this? Okay, explain to this uncle. What is Zoom bombing?
So Zoom, at one point, so a lot of people organize Zoom meetings without some security measures, like a waiting room, lobby, that kind of thing. And these links are sort of publicly accessible if you share them out, like if you post it somewhere public. Someone else can get that link. They can try to join the meeting, and they can do some, let's say, funny things on that meeting. And that sort of ruins the meeting for everyone who's there for a serious purpose. And that's definitely something that we're making sure we take all precautions possible to avoid.
Okay, so Zoom bombing being one of the security issues that you are keeping a very close eye on. Anything else?
So maybe not so much security in that regard, but I think the voting system is, I guess, one element of security. We want to make sure everyone that joins with a two-factor authentication, so that we're either tying a mobile device or phone number to every login. And that allows us to make sure that when someone votes, we know very well that they're a real person, that they own that device. They're not someone voting on someone else's behalf.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds like you've got everything sorted. So we wish you all the best for the virtual sitting tomorrow. But thank you so much for speaking with us tonight, Eshaan. We appreciate your time. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll continue our discussion on Parlimen Digital. Stay tuned to consider this. Thank you so much for staying with Sharaad and I on Consider This. Let's continue our conversation about Parlimen Digital, an initiative in which Malaysian youth are showing us that a virtual parliament can be done. It will emulate an actual sitting, including voting and passing of bills. So joining us on the line now, we have one of the participants, Adhura Husna Farouk Izwan. She is the Parlimen Digital representative for Balik Pulau, Penang, which incidentally is my father's kampung. Adhura, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Now,
Hi.
Can you tell us how you came to apply to be a delegate? Because we heard that there were so many applications. How did you come to apply to be a delegate, and what do you think were some of the reasons why you were chosen?
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, there were 6,000 applications alone for the whole 222 seats. And I was actually, I wasn't planning to apply, but I was nominated by several friends. And when I heard that they were short on representatives from the disabled community as well as the women, as the female side, so I decided that why not give it a shot and represent the minority community. So that's why I'm here. And going to the second question of why I was chosen, I'm not sure exactly.
Well, I mean, obviously, the stars aligned, and now you are, in fact, going to be in that assembly of 222 young people who will be discussing concerns about this country, where it's going, and real concerns, the pandemic, the public health crisis that we're having. Adhura, what are your concerns? If you're chosen to speak, what would you want the other 221 delegates to hear from you?
Okay, so that's not a tricky question, because that's always been my life philosophy in a way. So what I will be focusing on is two things. The first thing is equitable access to financial inclusion, to technical devices such as internet connection, even digital devices like computers, smartphones is very important now, especially in terms of the online learning. And wrapping it up, the second thing that I would like everyone to know is empowerment instead of welfare. That's mostly focusing on the minority groups, especially from where I am, the person with disabilities or orang kurang upaya. So we are trying to move past welfare-based system towards an empowerment-based system.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm really I hope that you get chosen to speak in this weekend sitting. But I'm curious to know, so since you were accepted, so after you discovered or you learned that you were accepted for Parlimen Digital, what happened since? Because, getting 222 young people together to discuss this, many of whom this is their first exposure to politics. What has been the process that you've observed and participated in?
True. So the process was quite smooth, though there could have been a lot more improvements. This is the first time, so I understand. But we started with an email by the Secretariat. So we received instructions from there to join a Telegram group in which we were all talking about where we are from, what we are doing, and what we aspire to do, to be, and to serve the country especially. So it was very overwhelming, and seeing all of this other 221 representatives from all over Malaysia is very inspiring.
Right. And I also understand that many of those who were chosen are students, and many of them have not voted before. So can you talk to me a little bit about the age group, particularly because it's a bit of a range? We hear the youngest is 15 years old. Several 15-year-olds are delegates. In fact, has it been difficult because of the playing field is not level, many different age groups in this in the youth parliament?
I think personally, what I see is that it hasn't been difficult because the Secretariat did a pretty good job in making sure that everyone understands their roles and the communication rules and everything. So it was pretty cool in a way that even we respect each other, and the youngest is 15, so I was pretty amazed. And they gave really, really good ideas when we were discussing in the Telegram group. We actually managed to organize ourselves into smaller clusters of motions to organize our discussion. So it's a very good start.
Adhura, are you excited to go beyond this moment? I mean, we were still waiting for the digital parliament to actually happen, or Parlimen Digital, as you all call it. Beyond that, are you excited to become one day an elected member of Parliament, to be a representative, something, get involved in politics, party politics, CSOs, NGOs? Is this sort of pushing you in that particular direction?
Okay, you're not the first person to ask me this, which is quite hilarious actually, because I'm already in civil society organizations and NGOs and working as an individual on the ground, especially for grassroots movement, but politics, probably not. I prefer more of a non-partisan-based approach where I just serve instead of all of the vanity play.
Right. So your observations, has it been that, it's not about politics, it's about issues for the participants of Parlimen Digital. Is that right?
Yeah, it's mostly about how all of us can better serve people. So it's more or less about the issues rather than our place, politics, the vanity play. So it's all about the issues. We were talking about internet connections. We were talking about equitable access. We were talking about even issues like water disruption, even issues like big issues, small issues, even like issues that we don't even know existed in Malaysia.
Well, Adhura, you know, I think there's a very idealistic kind of streak in you and many of the young people involved in this project about what ought to be politics. It should be about people. It should be about issues. But the reality is politics is also anchored in political parties, and there's a lot of selfishness and ego and people just grabbing at resources for themselves. We see that every day, the grab for resources once you come to power. Does that bother you, that in fact your idealistic view might not be able to translate into action if you don't get involved in that other thing, that ugly, dirty party politics that is of real Malaysia?
Yeah, I mean, like you're right. I tried politics before, like real not real politics, but somewhat real politics. I contested in Parlimen Digital Malaysia last year.
Okay.
And I lost, which is pretty good actually, because I'm not going to do it again. But it's quite idealistic in a way. That's true. But I see differently. Like politics is politicians are supposed to be mediators between the people and the government. Right. So, but it doesn't mean that there is only one way to do it. There are other ways to do it, such as grassroots movements, even corporate businesses, social enterprises, and etc.
All right. Adhura, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight. We really appreciate your time. All the best this weekend. If you guys can do it, then, you know, so can the real Dewan Rakyat, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much for speaking with us. Now, for those interested in watching the proceedings, Parlimen Digital will provide a live feed on their social media tomorrow. You can go to their website, www.parliament.digital. That's all the time we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan, signing off for the evening.
Thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend, folks. Good night.